Greetings, friends. Last night, Russian murderers once again attacked Ukraine using Iranian-Russian drones. Odessa region and Kharkiv came under attack. As before, the Russians targeted residential areas. Ukraine's defense forces also operated last night on the territory of the so-called Russia. In the settlement of Marino in the Kursk region, the location of Russian occupiers was struck. In addition, a massive Ukrainian drone attack took place last night in the Tambov region of the so-called Russia. There were multiple hits there, specifically on the Kotovsky gunpowder plant.
In addition, there were reports of air defense activity and explosions in the sky coming from the city of Kotovsk, that's in the Tambov region.
As for the operation of the air defense systems, a local resident could argue with this Russian propagandist, as he didn't notice any air defense at all.
Where's the air defense? So, the air defense isn't firing.
By the way, I noticed something interesting. Ukrainian drone attacks on the territory of so-called Russia are now happening almost daily. And for us, it's already become something of a routine. We don't get as excited as we did the first few times. But just think about it and imagine what would you have said if on the 24th of February 2022, someone told you that Ukraine would be launching massive attacks on so-called Russia every day. Russians don't like it.
I don't like it when they hit deep into our territory. I'm waiting for the moment we finally make systemic decisions.
Well, like it or not, just bear with it, my beauty. You have to go through with it.
Strikes will continue to hit so-called Russia. Ukraine is ramping up the production of long-range drones. And once again, I have to remind you that we are waiting for the first strikes from those drones and possibly missiles that we will produce together with Germany. This should happen in about a few weeks. But we also need drones to eliminate Russian occupiers.
People, with your help, we can hold the line effectively. With the help of Russories, we can mercilessly destroy the enemy and effectively provide protection for our Cossacks.
That's why I urge you to go and immediately donate for FPV kamikaze drones for the Ukrainian military. The military needs many more drones. All the payment details, as always, are in the description of this video. And also, according to statistics, only every second person who watches my videos is subscribed to the channel, while half are not. So fix that and subscribe. The Kotovsky gunpowder plant in the Tambov region has been attacked by Ukrainian drones before. This is at least the third attack already. The plant itself is engaged, among other things, in the production of certain components for Russian munitions.
By the way, the Tambov gunpowder plant, which is a regular partner of Techmash, participated in the development of the tank shell.
According to the old tradition, Medvedev once visited this plant, just as he did other facilities of the Russian military-industrial complex and oil refineries.
Obviously, this enterprise, like others, produces a critically important element for the special military operation gunpowder. That's why we
thank our little spotter, because following the same tradition, the factories he visits are later attacked by drones.
No, not the factory, maybe the factory. The factory? Hey, check what's going on there. Please scream.
But actually, friends, it just seemed that way to us there was no successful attack on this gunpowder factory. All the drones were shot down by Russian air defense, which, I remind you, doesn't actually exist there.
And the drones that tried to attack the city, one of the military facilities in the city were also shot down.
And since there were absolutely no direct hits on the target, and indeed all of the attacking UAVs were successfully intercepted and neutralized for a considerable period of time afterward, you could distinctly still hear the powerful secondary detonations and subsequent explosions emanating from the general direction of the factory complex.
The ammunition depot is on fire. The ammunition is exploding.
The Russians were offered a 30-day ceasefire and they refused. And after that, they were hit with an attack on their strategic aviation airfields and quite a few new strikes on so-called Russia itself. Let's talk some more about the Dnipropetrovsk region. The Russians have once again claimed that they are there.
Our defense ministry officially stated our troops are already in the Dnipropetrovsk region.
The Russian side has made similar statements before. 2 weeks ago, Russian propaganda already announced that Russian troops had entered the Dnipropetrovsk region.
And the news this evening, media reports indicate Russian army forward units reached the border of the Dnipropetrovsk region.
Back then, the occupiers really did have a photo session at the administrative border of the Dnipropetrovsk region, and then they died right there. This time, there is much more substantial evidence.
During the military operation, they crossed the border of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Hello everyone, guys.
However, even now the Russians are a bit confused about whether they are there or not. One says that they are only heading there,
We are getting closer and closer to the border with the Dnipropetrovsk region.
but on Russian television they not only claim that Russian troops have supposedly reached the administrative border of the Dnipropetrovsk region, but also that they are already advancing beyond it.
The success of the center's fighters. They have reached the western border of the DPR and continue to advance into the territory of the Dnipropetrovsk region.
And also, having entered the Dnipropetrovsk region, the Russians are already planning to take Zaporizhia, Kherson, and possibly even Kyiv in 2 or 3 days.
The fact that they have now entered the Dnipropetrovsk region is of course also aimed at moving further towards Zaporizhia and Kherson.
Of course, the Russians can talk about how they will take Kherson, which they already fled from, and about Zaporizhia. But the reality is somewhat different. And even supporters of the so-called Russia admit this.
Of course, we will liberate Zaporizhia and Kherson.
You haven't even entered any Zaporizhia. You yourselves ran away from Kherson.
For the 4th year, you haven't been able to push our troops away from Horivka so that nothing flies in there. What are you even asking for there?
But what is the real situation on the administrative border between Dnipropetrovsk and Donetsk regions? Unfortunately, there is no good news there. In the past few days, Russian invaders have made advances in the Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka directions, and they are now really very close, practically right up against the administrative border with Dnipropetrovsk region. But there are none of them in Dnipropetrovsk region itself. But this does not mean that the threat should be underestimated. For the Russians, these directions are a priority, and they are throwing the most forces at them.
Every 2 weeks or so, the enemy rotates their brigades and battalions, because they are worn down by our defensive lines. But we all need to clearly understand that this has been going on not for a week or two, but for months, and the enemy has a significant advantage. It's roughly 1 to 10 in manpower.
Unfortunately, we also have plenty of other problems on our side, particularly in the Pokrovsk direction. We regularly communicate with the units from there, and they write to us. I'd rather quote them directly, to be precise. There is a complete lack of mining, both anti-personnel and anti-tank. There are no adequate shelters. The enemy has targeted the strong points in open fields. These are practically the only shelters available. Everything else is dug during breaks between battles. There are no proper fortifications, Yago entanglements, dragon's teeth for the Russian occupiers. Even a single row of barbed wire can stop them, especially when they attack on motorcycles. That's standard favorite tactic. Coordination, there isn't enough of it. We want more and are working on it. Neighbors. Let me remind you, these are direct quotes. They are objectively weak. They have a lot of small units and almost no infantry or experienced UAV crews. They regularly lie about having positions, but in reality they're not there. That's how our assault troops ended up in an ambush. They didn't notice the destruction of enemy UAV crews, and several times saw Zala and Molnia drones flying at 200 to 300 meters altitude with complete impunity. The problems are practically the same as they were 6 months ago, a year ago, and even earlier. I have to repeat again and again that we urgently need a comprehensive army reform, and we shouldn't hope for some kind of truce that would make reform unnecessary. All the more so we shouldn't be counting on Trump now, who exactly 2 weeks ago, said that in 2 weeks everything would be clear regarding so-called Russia.
I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, we will find out very soon. We'll find out whether he's stringing us along or not. And if he is, then we'll respond a bit differently. But that will take about a week and a half to 2 weeks.
2 weeks have already passed. We'll be waiting with great anticipation for new deadlines from the American president.
I'll talk about this in approximately a month or perhaps in just 2 weeks. We will certainly see what ultimately happens and how things unfold. We'll hear from them this week. We'll actually see very soon.
America is very indecisive and isn't putting pressure on the so-called Russian Federation. Let me remind you that American senators are constantly threatening to impose large-scale serious sanctions.
It's popularly known as the Bill on Bone-Crushing Sanctions. This striking name was given to it because it would impose 500% secondary tariffs on anyone who buys Russian oil.
On the one hand, it seems like the senators really want to introduce secondary sanctions, and already 84 out of 100 have gathered in support. This is an unprecedented level of support, but they keep waiting and waiting for Trump's signal. That's why there are no new sanctions. It's also not worth counting on new arms supplies from the United States. Pete Hegseth, the head of the Pentagon, said that this is not in America's interests.
Are you ready to request funding for the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, and in what amount?
This is a reduction in this budget. As you know, this administration has a completely different view of this conflict.
Right now, the Americans are still transferring to us the weapons that were approved back during Biden's time. And even then, they're not giving us everything. And going forward, we shouldn't expect new aid packages. Maybe, if we're lucky, America will allow us to buy their weapons.
As of now, this aid is coming in, and there are active discussions with the Americans about purchasing, about buying weapons.
That's why, now more than ever, our task is to further strengthen support for the Ukrainian military. At the moment, we have many requests from the Sumy region totaling more than 20 million hryvnias, and requests from the Kostiantynivka and Pokrovsk directions amounting to about 40 million hryvnias. Send it to Rusorizes. And in the meantime, thanks to you, our soldiers have received another 355 new FPVs. Glory to the heroes. Friends, Russians understand only strength and nothing but strength. They will stop advancing only when they drown in their own blood.